Joining us now, as he does every Thursday at 3 o'clock, Sheil Kapadia of The Ringer. Sheil, how you feeling, brother?
Doing well. How you guys doing?
What up, Sheil? Happy to see you survived
Yeah, how was 2 hours with Elliot?
ESPN last night.
Yeah, how was 2 hours with Elliot for you?
I mean, fantastic. I got to, see what it's like to be you guys standing there. Now, I didn't have to do any of the hard part about going to breaks or I just got to sit there and fire off takes for 2 hours. It was fantastic.
Well, Elliot led with his completely absurd take that it was quite obviously the right thing to go for it on fourth down at the end of the Packers game. You sat there and you listened to him do it, like give his reasoning for 5.5 minutes. Now I know you believe the right thing to do is punt. What did you think of Elliott's argument?
Listen, I've known Elliot, I don't even know how many years now. It might be like 20 years. I've heard a lot of takes from Elliot over the years, so I was ready for that. I don't buy his take. I am generally the person saying be aggressive. You don't always need to punt. Don't worry about the risk type thing. But the bottom line is you do the decision that gives you the best chance to win in that moment. And I thought that the move that would have given them the best chance to win was to punt. I would have been really curious if they lost that game because of that. Vic Fangio, I just feel like would have been the angriest guy in Philadelphia. I don't know someone would have felt that in the building, but luckily they came through and they won anyway.
What's funny is when some people said to me, well, he did it because he trusts his defense. And I was like, no. The trust the defense thing is to give them as many yards. Yeah. And the defense played lights out, essentially, that game. I just thought, even in the flow of the game, it didn't even... And one thing I thought you said last night that I agree with is it doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason to when they are aggressive and when they're not. I think one of Elliott's points is they win being aggressive. And then you say, well, why do they run the ball at 3rd and 9? Why don't they go for points at the end of the half? It just doesn't seem like there is a cohesive reasoning to when they're doing it and when they're not doing it.
Yeah, that's how I felt. And all these coaches have somebody, in their headsets. It goes back to Doug Peterson. He had a guy that's telling them in these high stress situations, what gives us the best chance to win. And so I'm usually a guy who says, forget, my gut's always wrong. I don't know about you guys. Anytime I just make a decision with my gut, it's wrong. So like if I was in that situation, I would just say, all right, tell me what gives us the best chance to win and just do that. But yeah, with Sirianni, there is a little bit of inconsistency with how he manages the game sometimes where, like you said, he is conservative at times throughout the course of a game in those examples. And then other times with the game on the line, he's going for it. So listen, he almost never loses. So at this point, I feel very stupid criticizing him for anything because all they do is win almost every game they play. But I do think that's a valid point.
So it was the best defensive game of the year for the Eagles. I think that what was pretty much clear. After you went back and went through it, how much of they did there? Let me start that again. Yep. How much of what they did there do you think is sustainable for the rest of the year?
I think the big thing is that pass rush. I mean, if that pass rush can look anything like it looked last week, then this is a defense worth getting really excited about. It's something we've talked about for, I think, the last 2 years. There were times last year where we looked at it in the regular season and we're like, is this pass rush good enough? There are games where they're not really impacting the quarterback. And then, of course, they get to the playoffs and it looks unbelievable. And I think this year, before the Jalen Phillips trade, it's been up and down. There have been games where we go, yeah, the coverage isn't great, but man, they're giving the quarterback so much time back there. I thought Jalen Phillips was incredible in that game. I couldn't believe how good he looked in his Eagles debut, and I think it just kind of gives everyone else a lift. Now Jalix Hunt is like your third defensive end. Moro Ojimo played great in that football game. Jalen Carter looks healthier. So I think all of a sudden now I want to see it for more than one game, but I am excited at the prospects that this can be a pass rush that's one of the better ones in the NFL down the stretch here.
And it makes up for Jair Alexander is not going to be a solution at CB2. And if there's one thing that can help out the secondary or that spot of the secondary, it's getting to the quarterback sooner.
Yeah, I almost wondered if they had a conversation, before the trade deadline, and they're looking at all their options. All right, we could add a corner, we could add a nickel, we could add a pass rusher. And it's just like, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be a weakness somewhere. What's our best option? And I wonder if they looked at it and it did exactly what you said, Spike. Like, Adoree Jackson isn't going to turn into an all-pro. Keely Ringo's not going to turn into an all-pro. But man, if we can rush the passer better, we can do some things on the back end with our safeties to protect that second cornerback. It might get, it doesn't mean it's going to work every week. It could get exposed for sure. That is a weakness on the team, but I think it's a formula that could work for them.
I'm just wondering, is there going to be somewhat of a revolving door? Would you imagine they want to see Jacorian Bennett out there at some point, right?
I would think so. I keep waiting.
We haven't even got a chance to see him.
We haven't seen him, and Fangio's not exactly going, oh, this is my guy. When he's asked about him, he's like, yeah, I don't know. He's barely played, so don't ask me about him. I didn't trade for him. So I think, with Adoree Jackson, it's like they see a floor. They're like, all right, he's going to set a floor where hopefully he's not losing the game for us. Right. And then we can figure it out as we go. If he has a terrible game, even a terrible half, honestly, in one of these games, then they could make a change. I think we know at this point they probably don't want to go with Keely Ringo. He kind of got his shot and he didn't take it and run with it. So I think Adoree Jackson, maybe Jacorian Bennett, and then sort of the last resort, maybe not the last resort, just the other option would be Michael Carter at nickel and Cooper DeJean on the outside.
That certainly needs to be the last resort, Sheil.
I agree.
It should be the last resort.
It seems like it is for Vic, too.
Yeah.
Vic has said a few times that, he likes him where he is.
Yeah.
The offense did take a step back. It felt like the offense that we were arguing about for weeks on end prior to the Minnesota game and the Giants game. How much of that was... how much of that do you chalk up to weather? How much of that do you chalk up to the Packers playing well? And how much of that did you chalk up to the Eagles?
Yeah, I think the big thing to me is that they still want to be a running football team. And on first and second down, they're running the football at a really high rate. And before the bye, I know I don't know if you guys felt it too, that, hey, it feels like they're finding something with the run game. They're going under center. They're putting the sixth offensive lineman out there. And I was like, all right, this could lead to something. But it might have just been a 1 or 2 game sample. The Giants' run defense is terrible. And so if you look at it on the whole here through 10 weeks, they're just not a great running team. And so what happens is they're running the football on early downs. They're not picking up good yards. And then they're putting themselves in tough situations. So one of two things needs to happen. Either one, you need to be a better running team on early downs, and maybe they will be as the offensive line gets healthier. Or two, you might need to change that up a little bit where you're not throwing it downfield on early downs, but can you just scheme up some easy 5-6 yard completions? Jalen Hurts has been very accurate for the most part because you saw at the end of that game specifically, the Packers were just firing downhill. I mean, their safeties were not worried about play action or anything like that. They were just firing downhill in the run game, and it led to a bunch of negative plays. So that's the big thing I see. It's sort of this philosophical challenge that they have where they say, we want to run the football. We're a running team. But then you look at it and it's like, well, you're not really a good running team right now. So do you keep trying it or do you do something else?
So Sunday night, we go from one Giant game to another Giant game. The Eagles host the Lions on Sunday night. I think they're still a 1.5 favorite. Specifically to this matchup, what do we have to worry about the most from the Lions on Sunday night?
I think it's their skill group on offense. It's just a totally different challenge than you saw last week with the Packers, where you looked around and go, all right, they got some decent players, but none of these guys are going to kill us. Well, the Lions have a bunch of just explosive threats. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs might be the most explosive back in football this year. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is just third down, high leverage situations. He's in the slot. He's getting open. That's where they're going with the football. And then the big change that they made last week, Dan Campbell took over play calling duties for them. And one of the things he did was he got Jamison Williams very involved, who's kind of their explosive threat there on the outside, kind of their speed threat. So you throw in all those guys. Sam Laporta is probably a top 5 tight end in the NFL. They just have a lot of guys you have to account for. It's not one of these teams where you say, hey, if we take out this player, then we're good because the other guys aren't going to beat us. You have to be really thoughtful about, well, what's the situation and who do we want to take out? Where do we want to commit our resources? So I think that's the biggest challenge that the Lions present.
So bad news for you, Sheil. As you predict them to lose, they keep winning.
1-9, Sheil.
There we go.
Yeah, which now I will say we have asked Sheil, just like me, as the Eagles went on a winning
Forced Sheil, Spike.
What's
not
that?
Asked. Forced
Sheil.
Sheil, not asked. Yeah.
For Sheil. Well, for the good of Philadelphia, for the good of the Eagles. Last year, the Eagles went on a winning streak when I started picking against them. So we, after the 2 losses, decided to pick against them. They won, and we asked Sheil in solidarity to do so. So now when we get Sheil's prediction, I want you to understand that he must pick the Lions. So Sheil, what is your prediction?
At this point, I'm almost like, all right, let them just lose a game at some point.
Yes.
So I can get back to making these picks, and
Yep.
pick the Eagles a few of these weeks. But I actually, I was looking at the schedule and I was going, what are the games they're most likely to lose the rest of the way? Because I don't think they're going to go 15-2. Maybe they will go 15-2. But I was looking at it and I was like, all right, at Buffalo later in the season. And after that game, this game popped up. I think it's an offense that can be very good. And the Eagles' offense right now is in a bit of turmoil. So I will go ahead and pick the Lions. I'll be honest. I'm picking the Lions regardless of our
Okay.
rule.
All right. Okay.
So this is a legit pick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the Lions 23-20 in this game.
Wow. Even with that offense that is so dynamic, you think the Eagles hold them to 23 points?
Well, I like this Eagles defense a lot.
You
Yeah,
do,
I like the.
yeah.
Listen, there is a scenario where the Eagles pass rush just kind of puts Goff in a blender. He's not good in bad weather, and when he's pressured, he turns into a pumpkin. So it could be that type of game for sure. That wouldn't shock me, but I do think they're going to come in saying we can't let that happen. Let's get rid of the ball quickly. Let's run the ball, and I think it's going to be a little bit more low scoring, methodical type game.
All right, Sheil, thank you as always, and congratulations on surviving ESPN last night.
All right, guys. Talk to you next week.
All right, Sheil.
There he is, the great Sheil Kapadia. Well, he doesn't get any credit for picking against the Eagles this week because he was going to pick against them anyway.
Yeah, but you really meant this one.
He really means this one, which means the Eagles are going to lose.